This is the most famous piece of paper in the world, a crisp $100 bill. But there's this tiny phrase on the back that often goes unnoticed, and it says, "In God we trust." That's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting how we celebrate the paper, how we hustle for it, obsess over it, and yet printed right there it says to trust in God, almost like it's winking at us, reminding us there might be more to this whole money thing than meets the eye. In this video, I want to introduce you to two different ways of living. There's the world's economy, and then there's God's economy. Then at the end, we will take a look at an alternate world and what it would look like if everyone adopted the "in God we trust" view. Not in some kind of a woo-woo spiritual kind of way, but in a very real and practical way with examples. But first, you've probably grown up in the world's economy just like me.
The headlines over the weekend have come fast and furious. Let's get the opening bell here.
In the world's economy, you work hard and get paid, then you buy stuff. Rinse and repeat. Sounds like real life, right? You see it everywhere, from the Wall Street big shots to the little small town store owners. We believe in individual ownership. That means my stuff, my bank account, my business. Work hard, get paid, hard work pays off. We've heard all these phrases a million times, and don't get me wrong, I'm all for making a buck. My whole career is about teaching people how to grow their businesses. By the way, hi, my name is Justin Brooke. I've been in advertising for 20 years, made millions, but in 2019, I had a radical encounter with the God of the Bible. I went from atheist to Christian literally overnight, but this isn't about me. This is about that famous little piece of paper that everyone wants, the good old $100 bill. Where was I? The world's economy. There's a certain yuck to the competition, the constant race to out-earn or outsmart the next person. Honestly, it's kind of stressful. I mean, we measure by how big our paycheck is, how large our house is, how fancy our car looks. And when you're in this race, some folks get trampled along the way. The poor, the homeless, the widows, the less fortunate. Sadly, they're often an afterthought. Seriously, when's the last time you've thought about a widow or even talked to one? That's not to point fingers, it's just how the world's economy is structured. Everyone's like climbing this ladder over others to grab their share of that $100 bill. Some do it ethically and others, well, not so much. I mean, that same $100 bill also inspires a lot of crime worldwide. It drives people mad, literally willing to kill for it, this little piece of paper. It's also kind of a backstage pass to life's experiences, or so we've been told. We're bombarded with commercials showing us shiny new cars and dream vacations, fancy tech gadgets. You can't scroll for 5 seconds without seeing some influencer flaunting their new Rolex, or the Lambo, or the Armani suit.
This is Armani.
And I get it. Money can solve a lot of problems. It buys convenience. It can help your family. It can even buy a bit of freedom, like a cruise to the Bahamas, or I don't know, like a wellness retreat. But hear me well, right? Money does have its good uses. But does it truly fill your heart? I mean, does it make you happy in the long run, or do you just end up wanting more? It's a word that seems like it should be the American slogan. Right under the red, white, and blue is the word more. One of the most uncomfortable truths about this little piece of paper is that one is never quite enough. You want 6 figures, and then you want 7, you want 7, then you want 8, and you want 9. As soon as you settle on one goal, there's another one staring you right in the face. I mean, you could be driving down the road in a perfectly good car, staring out at another car, and wishing that one was yours.
You think I'm worried about this fool, man? This is nothing.
And the cycle just continues, pulling you forward like a treadmill that never stops. Bigger house, better cars, until one day you're working nights and holidays just to afford all the things. So here's the big question. Is there another way to view money and ownership, or is it just all doom and gloom? Is there a perspective that doesn't spin us into a frenzy of never-ending more? Well, in the Bible, it says, oh, wait, don't touch the back button. Hear me out. In the Bible, we find this recurring message that everything belongs to God. None of it is actually ours. It's all a gift that's been given to us, and He's watching to see how we use it. Now, if that's true, then we're not really owners. We're stewards, which is huge. Imagine the difference that makes in your mindset. Instead of hoarding every penny for yourself, maybe you start thinking about how to use the money in a better way. What would that look like? Would you begin to share it, invest it, use it to genuinely help others? Now, I'm not suggesting you toss out the world system altogether. We still have bills. We can still have nice things. There's nothing wrong with that. But what if we stop for a second to consider that maybe, just maybe, there's a higher calling to how we handle money? Maybe there's a reason why the almighty dollar says to trust in the almighty God. In the next part of this video, we're going to dive deeper into the idea of God's economy, different from the world's economy. We'll contrast it with the typical chase for more cash, but there's something refreshing about living in God's economy versus the world's economy. People who live in God's economy often find a sense of purpose and peace that money alone just can't provide. They aren't striving for more, and they don't sweat every little market crash, and they tend to have better and deeper relationships. The world's economy that we're all currently immersed in, it's not all bad, but it's definitely not perfect. There's wealth disparity, exploitation, and the unchecked belief that status somehow equals happiness. You can look at celebrity addiction.
Hayden Panettiere is opening up about her addiction to opioids and alcohol.
Like 2 weeks before I was introduced to heroin and crack cocaine.
Actor Bradley Cooper getting deep about his past struggles with substances and self-esteem.
Or big corporate scandals.
Bankruptcy and possibly years in jail. Theranos founder Elizabeth Holmes appeared in court to set a trial date as she faces charges of fraud.
Now to the latest on the stunning downfall of one of the biggest names in cryptocurrency. FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried is in a Bahamas jail cell this morning on charges he misused billions of dollars from customers for his own personal gain.
But I want to explore a system that might be kinder to our minds, our souls, and the people around us. So that's our setup. We've got two systems. We've got the world's economy, which is ownership, pursuit of wealth, and the survival of the fittest. And then you've got God's economy, divine ownership, stewardship, compassion, and generosity. We'll see if it's all pie in the sky, wishful thinking, or if it has some real world merit. Why, in fact, does this little piece of paper that everyone wants so bad have the words, "In God we trust," written on every single one of them? Money in God. It's like a built-in contradiction, or is it? Let's see if there's a bigger story at play. We're diving right into God's economy, a system that flips the script on just about everything we've been taught about money, ownership, wealth, and success. As an advertising guy myself, I spent the better part of a decade chasing that magical 2 comma number that everyone wants, only to hit it and be just as broke as I was when I was renting a little 2-bedroom apartment in the ghettos of Tampa, Florida, where my neighbors on all 3 sides were drug dealers, and I could hear the one on the right beating his wife almost every night. But today, living in God's economy, man, life is very, very different for me. Let me tell you, there's a certain peace that comes from shifting your mindset from it's all mine to it's all His. Let's break down the two systems and how they differ. According to the Bible, you'll see this pops up in a lot of different passages. God actually owns everything, not just churches or ministry dollars, everything. The earth, the trees, the money in your wallet, the shoes on your feet, the food in your fridge, it's all His. Well, let's just say He's coming back soon. Ownership is a powerful concept. If you own it, you can do whatever you want with it. You can spend it, flaunt it, hide it under your mattress even. But if God owns it, now you're accountable for how you use it. It means every purchase, every investment, every charitable donation might need to align with God's principles. It's kind of like having an investor who also cares about the moral impact of your portfolio, not just the return. Imagine that concept for a second, where you begin judging every dollar spent by its moral impact, instead of just what you receive from it. It's a whole different kind of way of thinking. I don't think it's a coincidence that every dollar has that little reminder stamped on the back of it. One thing that sets God's economy apart is that it reminds us material wealth is temporary. That mansion could burn down. That sweet new car can get repossessed. And the tech stock you hyped about, it can plummet overnight. You've seen the headlines. Billionaires losing fortunes in a day.
Time now for the Executive Edge. We've been talking Facebook all morning. Shares plunging after the company's latest results disappointed. Investors lost a lot of money, but nobody lost more than CEO Mark Zuckerberg.
All right, shares of Amazon crashed 14% following its disappointing quarter on Friday, and that hit the company's founder, Jeff Bezos, hard.
Entire markets collapsing.
A million people cancelled their subscriptions with Netflix in the past 3 months, but the streaming giants expected to lose twice the number after years.
The Nasdaq fell by more than 3.5%, and the S&P nearly 3%. CBS's Kelly O'Grady joins us now. All right, Kelly, the markets tanked after we heard from the Fed chair. What's it that he said that really worried people?
That he's cautious about interest rates and inflation.
Wealth is as fleeting as a hashtag that blows up your feed one day and then disappears the next. Does that mean we stop caring about money altogether? Absolutely not. We still have mortgages and we've got Netflix subscriptions too. But it does mean that we should hold on to money more loosely, understanding it can vanish without warning. And if we're open-handed with what we have, we might find that fear of losing it fades, releasing us from the stress of striving and that fear of failure. Can you even imagine what life would be like if you weren't worried about the next promotion or where the stocks are going or if your project will fail? I'm telling you, there is a peace of mind that exists unlike any other. So if everything belongs to God and wealth is temporary, then where do we find true riches? According to the Bible, knowing Jesus is the real treasure. And I know this sounds like a Sunday school answer, but hang with me. The idea is that when your sense of identity and security and worth is wrapped up in something eternal, like a relationship with a loving creator of all things, then you're going to be less shaken by the inevitable ups and downs of life. Let me give you a real world example. Black Friday of 2024, our sales were soaring. And then I got an email from Stripe, which is our payment processor, that they were shutting us down. Overnight, my business was crippled. By all counts, I should have spiraled into depression and fear, but my first thought was, do I still have Jesus? And the answer was yes. So my next thought was, well, then I'm good. I'll deal with this other thing tomorrow. It's all going to be all right in the end. In a world's economic mindset, a market crash can feel like the sky is falling. People literally jump off buildings to their death because of market crashes. But in God's economy, you might feel a temporary pinch, but it doesn't shatter your whole world. Your faith and hope lie beyond that Dow Jones or the S&P 500. And that might sound super spiritual, but trust me, practical freedom comes with it. There's less stress, fewer panic attacks, and more confidence that tomorrow is going to be okay. Something greater than you is in control, and that's a very freeing thought. But don't just take my word for it.
2,500 scriptures on how to handle money and possessions. And I started reading people like Ron Blue and Larry Burkett and Howard Dayton, who were the first guys in the Christian space in the modern era to talk about what the Bible says about money. And I was amazed. And I started living, Sharon and I started living by those principles, and they started working. Now, I won't tell you it was instant. It was not instant. If you're looking for instant, if you want to get rich quick, God is not in the microwave business. He's a crock pot guy. It's going to take time.
It's really, we see this reflected King David in 1 Chronicles 29. He says, but who am I? And what is my people that we should be able to offer thus willingly? Yeah. He says, all things come from you, Lord. And so for us, we drew a line and we said, we're not gonna, it's not pious frugality. In fact, it's a nice lifestyle, but it's really reflecting something Randy Alcorn has said, which is if God brings increase in your life, it's to increase your standard of giving, not your standard of living.
There are folks all around the world quietly practicing these strategies, and they're finding a unique sense of fulfillment. Sure, they might not have the Lamborghini or the penthouse, but they've got peace in their hearts, roofs over their heads, and a clear mission to serve. Honestly, which would you rather have? A Lamborghini in your driveway, free to drive anytime you want? I'm not gonna lie, it would be fun. Would you rather become part of a life mission that you felt so passionate about, that you were ecstatic about getting out of bed every day? Would you rather have a thing or a purpose? This is where the concept of God's economy starts to shine brightest, when you realize it's not just a theory, it's a way of life that impacts how you treat money, people, and even your own future. What happens when entire communities and organizations operate under God's economy? Can it make a dent in poverty, inequality, or the countless other social issues that keep us awake at night? If you want the fast track, the world's economy is always ready to run you ragged. But if you want peace and purpose, God's economy offers a different kind of ROI, one measured in eternal peace. Now, we've spent some time looking at the world's economy in Act 1 and contrasting it with God's economy in Act 2. Now comes the big question. What if entire communities, maybe even whole nations, decided to operate on the principles of God's economy? Would it change anything? Could it solve real problems like poverty and inequality, or is that just a pipe dream? Let's see. Picture this. Instead of companies competing to squeeze every last cent of profit, they look for ways to serve, like Tom's Shoes, who gives a pair of shoes to someone in need for every pair that you buy.
I started Tom's 12 years ago with a very simple idea. I said, every time we sell a pair of shoes, we will give a pair to a child in need, one for one.
Instead of individuals owning their car, they hold possessions loosely, ready to share it or lend it to someone who needs it. And instead of the poor living in constant despair, they're surrounded by communities that see it as their privilege and even their honor to help out. Instead of people passing by, the homeless acting like they aren't even there, everyone who passes by offers up something, even if it's just a warm cup of coffee or a word of encouragement. Can you even imagine what that would do to the bum on the street? Everyone who passed by, all of a sudden giving them a pat on the back and a word of encouragement, and maybe even one of those pieces of paper with the phrase, "In God We Trust," stamped on the back of it. I mean, just think about that for a second. How would just an encouraging word from every passerby change the life of homeless people, or a cup of coffee first thing in the morning from the nearest neighbor? Don't you see how this changes everything? How it's not just spiritual woo-woo, but has massive real-world practical impact? Now, I'm not saying we suddenly wake up in a perfect utopia. Humans are still, well, they're humans. There'd be conflicts and corruption and misunderstandings. But if more of us believe that our resources ultimately belong to a loving creator, we might think twice before exploiting them or hoarding them. We'd probably feel an internal push to check our greed at the door. And if you ask me, that alone might turn down the temperature on a lot of the world's problems. Plus, wouldn't it just be comforting to wake up each day trying to make this new world a reality in your local town? I mean, what if your town was first? What if your town was the first to see homelessness erased, and it was all because you chose to wake up and live life a little different? I don't know about you, but that fires me up. I can already hear the comments, though. I can hear them. This dude's a socialist. I mean, there's a big difference between what I'm suggesting and socialism. First of all, socialism is forced on people. What I'm talking about is a choice, a voluntary opt-in. Also, what I'm talking about comes from your overflow, not your dinner table. Instead of the excess piling up, it voluntarily gets distributed to who you think is best, not some government mandate. But, I mean, trolls will be trolls. That being said, let me tell you about a few actual examples where God's economy has made a difference. Let's talk about microfinance in underserved regions. In many places, churches and faith-based organizations have launched microfinance programs. These are small loans to entrepreneurs who can't get approved by traditional banks. For example, buying a sponge, some soap, and a bucket for a guy who just lost his job so he can start washing cars for money in the meantime to keep dinner on the table. These programs often encourage or require borrowers to help each other learn business skills, share resources, and even pray together. Over time, entire communities have shifted from barely scraping by to creating sustainable local economies.
This is the week we've been preparing for all across this year. Love Has No Limits is in full effect with our culminating initiative, One Day LA. 20,000 volunteers are about to take to the streets to provide LA the greatest display of love perhaps it has ever experienced.
Now, let's also talk about community development programs. Some churches and nonprofits set up communal gardens.
Since 2014, members of Concord United Methodist in Knoxville, Tennessee, have grown their sanctuary to include 2 vacant lots,
skill sharing workshops, and job training programs. They approach economic hardship with compassion and generosity. And the results? Reduced crime and a stronger sense of community. People get more jobs, they get more raises at work, and better grades in school, which all leads to more people actually wanting to stick around and invest in each other. People who love the town that they live in, they tend to not leave that town. We've also seen businesses run by entrepreneurs who dedicate a portion of their profits to charitable causes or pay their workers significantly above industry standard, which creates loyal employees and customers who can't wait to buy because they know the money is going to a good cause. But in all of these cases, God's economic principles, the stewardship, generosity, caring for the poor, they get woven into day-to-day life. It's not just a spiritual feel-good thing. The economic data backs it up. More generosity does actually lead to healthier local markets, better social stability, and stronger families. So let's scale these stories up a bit. If entire communities embrace God's economic principles, you'll start seeing these tangible results. You're going to see lower crime rates, because when neighbors look after each other, it naturally leads to less theft and violence. You're going to see higher community engagement. People who believe everything they have is on loan are compelled to share more of their time, talents, and resources. You'll also see improved mental health. Financial stress is a major cause of anxiety and depression. Handing over that burden, believing that your needs are ultimately provided for, it does bring relief. Does it solve everything? No. But the shift in mindset has a track record of healing broken communities from the inside out. And here's something else I've noticed. Living by God's economy often gives people a larger sense of purpose. It's one thing to grind away at a 9-to-5, stack up some savings, and retire someday. It's another thing entirely to believe your efforts can be part of a bigger plan, one that actually transforms neighborhoods and even whole cities. In my line of work, I've encountered countless entrepreneurs. The ones who seem the happiest, the ones who say they feel blessed beyond measure, are usually the ones who figured out that wealth is a tool, not an idol. They're not out there worshiping the money they make. They're using it as a resource to leave the world better than they found it. That right there is a hallmark of somebody operating under God's economy. But my friends who are still chasing the dollars and the Lambos, all of them are stressed out, overworked, and they're just heading for burnout. They don't see it coming, but I do, because I've been there. You know the type. You've seen them out there. Let's face it, we live in a world obsessed with the $100 bill. From daily stock market ticks to Instagram reels showcasing lavish lifestyles, it's no secret that society at large still bows at the altar of money. There's a reason headlines about billionaires and mega lotteries grab our attention so easily. We're just mesmerized by wealth. But here's the thing, it's right on our paper money. In God we trust. A cosmic wink, a reminder to look deeper. And that's where we land this plane, my friend. The tension between the world's economic system and God's economy isn't going away anytime soon, but we do get to choose. We can choose to keep scraping for every last dollar, or we can realize we're stewards of something bigger than ourselves. We can join others and start building the town we wish to live in, one relationship at a time. So the next time you see that $100 bill, just remember these 4 little words. In God we trust. Reminding you to think about how you use it and who it really came from. That's why it's there, to remind you that there is a better way. Just gotta ask, will you choose it? Let me know in the comments below.